Good afternoon, and thanks for joining us. I'm Judy Simpson. As always, on the fourth Wednesday of the month, I'm joined by Mark LaBarr, conservation biologist for Audubon, Vermont. Great to see you.
Always great to be here.
So, what's been going on? It sounds like there's been some pretty exciting things happening down at Bombazine State Park.
Yes, so a very exciting bird for birders around the state. Starting in about mid-August, the folks that are down there, the ranger down there for Half Moon Bay State Park and at Bombazine, and his wife, Chelsea Carroll, started seeing this strange bird, often on the lawn at the thing, and it turned out to be an immature yellow-crowned night heron. This is a picture by Marv Elliott, who's he's the co-president of the Rutland County Audubon chapter.
It's a great photo.
So yeah, it's a great shot, and you know, it's kind of deceiving because this is an immature, so it doesn't have the full thing. The adult yellow-crowned night heron looks considerably different than this, and it has much stronger features, as you can see.
Yeah.
So this was a great find for birders. The first time this bird was seen in the state was back in the 50s, and the last time it was seen in the state was in 2005.
So why is it here?
It breeds along the coast, all the way up to like southern Connecticut. It also breeds in the interior, but it does move around this time of year and occasionally moves out of that zone. And this one just happened to show up at Bombazine State Park.
Maybe just a little sidetracked.
Yeah, but you know, it's been hanging out there, I guess, eating a lot of frogs. On the coast, they eat a lot of crabs and things like that. And this bird, which is really nice about it, has been very visible. It's been hanging out right there near the entrance gate, right on the lawn of Bombazine State Park. Here you can see it's standing off a squirrel. This is a picture from that Chelsea Carroll submitted. But it's great for birders because oftentimes these rarities will show up, and they show up in somebody's backyard. They show up at a feeder, and it's private property, you know, and so people are often very generous and allow people to get and see the birds. But, you know, if you have a rare bird at your feeder and all of a sudden you have 10 cars sitting out there with people binoculars, it can be a little bit intimidating. So having it right there on the lawn like that, where people can pull up, people were camping out, it would show up in the morning, and it would show up in the evening, so they were camping out and then getting up to see it first thing in the morning, so that was great. And then what was really nice is Chelsea and her husband became members of the Rutland County Audubon chapter.
Oh, that's wonderful.
So the bird has been there now, and I think through the beginning part of September, people were still seeing it. It'll move on fairly shortly, you know, as winter progresses, it'll move down to the coast and further south. But still a great bird that had a lot of, you know, drew a lot of people to it, and a lot of people got to see it.
Okay, well, we have a picture now sent in from Karen of Waterbury, wondering if this was possibly another yellow-crowned night heron. She says, we're seeing the same bird now in the evening for about a week, a heron of some kind. Could it be one of these yellow-crowned night herons?
Yeah, and if you look at this, you can, you know, the picture's a little bit tough, but you can see that black cap on this. And this is a species that we do have here in Vermont, and we do see pretty regularly in the Lake Champlain area. Oftentimes, sometimes at Shelburne Farms. This is a black-crowned night heron. And we spoke about this on previous shows. It's a bird that, again, breeds out on Lake Champlain on some of the islands. Usually you see it right around there. So, but still a good bird for somebody in Waterbury.
Yeah.
The black-crowned night heron, like its cousin, the yellow-crowned night heron, feeds at night and early in the morning, has very large eyes that allow the bird to see at night. Unfortunately for us on Lake Champlain, it also eats common tern chicks often, which, as you know, is a bird that I am very fond of and a state endangered species. But it is a very cool bird, and it is a night heron, probably the night heron that we see most regularly here in Vermont.
Might it be at the Waterbury Reservoir, maybe?
It could be. Again, this time of year, lots of things are moving around. you know, it's migration season. It's September, and you've got things that are beginning to shuffle back and forth or beginning their push to head south. And so this is just a bird that probably was taking advantage of a food source right there.
All right, well, that's not the only thing that's exciting birders these days.
Right, and as I said, it's migration season. And so one of the big migration happenings is the annual hawk migration. There's our black-crowned night heron. So you can see it's...
That's a good-looking bird.
Yeah, it is a good-looking bird. And it has that big red eye, and that, so it has the shape of the yellow-crowned, but again, distinctly different. But getting back to the other things that are migrating, it is time for our hawk migrations. And so things are beginning to push through, and there are a couple of different places in Vermont, Mount Philo being one of them, in which you can start to see these hawk migrate. One of the big one is the Broadwinged Hawk. This is a bird that migrates, it peaks in mid-September through the end of September. You can see that big white tail band on the bottom, and that's really what tells you this is a broad-winged hawk. And on Mount Philo earlier in September, folks saw at least 800 of them passing through down through the Champlain Valley. Now, they travel like this. This is called a kettle, and what they'll do is they catch the updrafts. Usually you'll get big pushes of birds when the wind is blowing out of the north and it's nice and warm, and that causes air to lift from the heated earth, and they'll updraft in these big kettles, and then they'll slowly fly down and then lift up again and move down the Champlain Valley and further south. So oftentimes when they see that 800, those birds could be on the New York side as much as the Vermont side. You know, Philo gives you that really nice look across Charlotte and out onto the lake. But there's been other things seen, you know, a couple of big birds, which are always easy to tell when they're flying over. You mentioned earlier eagles becoming more popular, you know, populous in the state. So on this particular day, they had like 10 of them pass by Mount Philo, if not more.
Yeah, it's hard to miss a bald eagle.
It is hard to, yes. Even an immature eagle without that white head and tail is still a big bird.
Yeah.
And when you see it out there with other birds that are flying, it stands right out. I've been on Mount Philo where oftentimes the birds will come directly over the area where you're watching, and you get these up-close looks, and it's just pretty impressive. Another bird that you would see out there would be osprey are moving through, and they're a little bit different. They're another big bird, but you can see they have that white belly, but they also have that crooked wing that kind of right there.
Yeah, there's a lot going on with that bird.
And so, again, when you're watching hawks, you're often seeing them at a distance, or you're seeing them over your head. And so some of the characteristics are tough to pull out, and seeing that shape of the wing really lets you know that the osprey or fishhawk is what you're looking at.
Yes, so you're looking for shapes.
Shapes, yeah, shapes are a big thing. Shapes and sizes, you know, we talked about those two. Those are pretty big birds, so when you're out there watching, you can say, big bird, these are the ones that I can, you know, narrow the number down to. But there's a number of smaller hawks and falcons that push through as well. The accipiters, which are our woodland hawks, which are our Cooper's hawk and our sharp-shinned hawk, look very different than some of the buteos that are out there. The sharp-shinned hawk, which they had a number pass through on Mount Philo, have a real long, narrow tail and short, stubby wings. And this allows them to navigate the woodlands of Vermont, searching for prey, which is primarily birds. But this, you know, again, it's a different shape than what you saw there. You can see it still has those hawk-like fingers out on the edges of the wings, but you can also see that it has that real narrow tail out back. So sometimes Coopers and sharpshins, or sharpies as we call them, can be difficult to differentiate because they overlap a little bit in sizes, with the sharpie being smaller. But you can get a general sense that it's an accipiter that's out there that's flying. Other things that migrate through, again, going on shape. You can see this bird too has a longish tail, but you can see those wings are very different from that sharp-shinned hawk. And this is your kind of classic falcon shape. Right. That pointed wing pattern on the, you know, where the wings come down to that sharp point to the back. And so you get a number of falcons that come through. This happens to be an American kestrel. but some of the other falcons you might see is peregrine falcons or merlins. Kestrels are pretty small in stature. They're a bird of open grasslands. You often see them hanging out on telephone wires and hunting over fields.
Yep.
And you get a little bit bigger and different thing when you get to peregrine falcon. They're a little bit larger in size. Again, you're looking at size and shape when you do that.
Okay, what else have people been seeing?
So another one that's usually a bird that kind of comes through a little bit later, more in October. This is the red-tailed hawk. Again, this is a buteo. You can see by that really large wingspan there, and that broad tail, short broad tail in the back. And usually you get that glint of red. If it's above you, you can kind of see the red through it. Sometimes they'll fly below you, and you can catch that red there. Another bird that is often seen at Mount Philo and some of the other mountains is the northern harrier, or it used to be called the marsh hawk. This bird, if you can see it, and I've done this from Philo where it flies below the cliff edge, you can see that white band on the rump there. Right. And that's a giveaway. But it also flies kind of like a turkey vulture with its wings in kind of a V shape, and it'll rock back and forth. Yep. So again, using a couple of different pieces, you can kind of clue into what bird it is.
Yeah.
So.
Well, we have time for some more viewer mail, and here's a question from Roxy Hayward. She writes, had a new visitor to our pond in the backyard. The bird was very large, approximately 30 inches tall. I believe it was a type of eagle. Too small for a hawk or falcon, do you know?
Well, seeing from the picture that she sent in, it was an eagle, and you can see they took the picture. It looks like right through the railing on their back porch. So this bird is really close, and it's only given us the back side of it, but it's a big bird, and it's an immature eagle, an immature bald eagle. And that's a pretty good bird feeder, visitor to your backyard. That's a great bird to see, and as we've mentioned, eagles are doing increasingly well across the state.
And not unusual for them to be that close to a house?
Well, that is a little bit odd. I've often, when we do our midwinter bald eagle surveys, you can sometimes drive almost right up underneath them. If they're in a tree, they're kind of not to be bothered. But my guess is that bird was maybe attracted by something there that was going to be something to eat, and wasn't too fazed by. And it looked like they were taking that picture again, being a little stealth. Right, which is good. Which is good, right, to keep that bird around.
So what else have we been seeing out and about?
Well, it is migration time. Yeah. And so there's been a number of warblers that are going through. At the Audubon, we've had a whole bunch of black-throated greens. There was a big push of magnolia warblers. And so it's a great time of year for a lot of people. You said your bluebirds were back. Bluebirds were back. I didn't see them all summer. Saw them in the spring, didn't see them all summer long. And then Saturday, I was talking to my mother in the morning, out in the backyard, and there they were. Yeah. With fledglings. So it could be just a couple bluebirds prospecting, looking for what might be available. There's been a couple questions I've gotten about Canada geese flying and migrating, and whether it's too early for them to move. And a lot of times, we'll get these questions at the Audubon where the people will call in and say, I saw Canada geese, but they were migrating north. Are they confused? And oftentimes these birds are just moving back and forth between roosting areas out maybe on Lake Champlain or other large bodies of water, and feeding areas. So they can move in all different directions, and they're not necessarily set on moving south as much as they will be as time passes and they move forward. We've had this unusual, wonderful stretch of weather. Does that have anything to do with bird migration? With hawk migration, it might. You get that warm weather, and if you get some north winds, that's going to create the right airflow for those birds to move on. But in general, probably not for many birds. They can be very weather dependent, so it's not necessarily a heat thing as much as it is how fronts are moving through and how fronts are pushing the birds. You get, again, those winds out of the north and a nice clear sky, and the birds will take advantage of that and move north. So birds might be, with the clear skies we've been having, taking advantage of that, but it's probably not that big of a factor.
You know, when I was talking to my mother on the phone, she was asking me about hummingbirds because someone suggested that she get a hummingbird feeder, and she said, well, isn't it too late?
Nope, and we get this question a lot. You know, how late should I leave my hummingbird feeder up? If I leave it up, are they going to not migrate? And they will migrate. They know to skedaddle. And those hummingbird feeders this time of year, there's a lot of food for them out there already with a lot of flowering shrubs and stuff like that. It still provides them with a really good food source to make those leaps that they need to make. You know, migration is a very stressful time for a lot of birds, and so most of the small birds will feed during the day and migrate at night. Mm-hmm. So having a food source that kind of energizes them through there
is a big help.
Is a big help. So, you know, people can leave their hummingbird feeders up. Ours is still up at the Audubon, and it just helps them along.
All right, thanks a lot, Mark. If you have a bird-related question, you can write to Mark at Audubon, Vermont, 255 Sherman Hollow Road in Huntington. The zip code is 05462. You can also email Mark. His email address is mlabarr@audubon.org. Thanks so much.
You're very welcome.
That's our program for today. I'm Judy Simpson. We'll see you again next time on Across the Fence.